way apart from the Prime Minister, I was finished. That never happened. Now, with Nick Clegg, it's a wholly different situation. He is the leader of a party, and there will be differences between him and David Cameron on policy issues and probably on personality issues. It has an inbuilt tension. That doesn't mean to say it can't work, but it is not the same as the Deputy Prime Minister we've seen from monolithic...
Do you think they'll have, a, so to speak, a double lock on policy? They'll both have to agree before policy goes ahead, or there's a change of policy?
Yes, they will. I mean, that is all... We've seen the document, which is the starting point. There are a lot of policies which you can't get answers to at the moment, because they haven't yet sorted out what their position is. And there will be... it'll take time. And there will be mistakes, and the press will be all over the place trying to sort of foment difficulties one way or another. So it's a field day for the media, and they're going to be unpopular within a relatively short period of time, because the steps they're going to have to take, which everyone was told about, all the politicians said they were going to be the toughest cuts since '79. They didn't say what they're going to be, but they said they were going to be the toughest since '79. This government is going to be very unpopular, and there'll be great stresses and strains.
Hold on a second, I come to you. The man here in the front. You in the blue. Yes?
I think David Cameron's given away just enough, or he's given away the right amount, because it's enough that he can take the credit if it goes well, but there's enough kind of Liberal input to, he can probably spin it in his favour.
Blame the Liberals if it goes
badly.
Wrong.
So either way, he wins, the Liberal lose.
And the woman in the middle there, you.
Hi, oh, was it?
Yeah, that's you.
OK. I was wondering whether the politicians thought that the big het-up about the coalition is a bit too much, because, I mean, if you look back in history, there's been a coalition formed before when there was a time of economic distress, and whether you think, you know, that there's a bit...
In the 1930s?
Yeah, it was formed before. And
I wouldn't advise Simon to go back to the history books, because history teaches us that when the Liberals have got in bed with the Tories, it's pretty much always turned out badly. In 1886, they were destroyed, they were swallowed up by the Conservative Party. In 1931, the National Liberals were consumed. I think Michael actually stood as a National Liberal in 1959, I believe, which was then swallowed up by the Conservative Party. So be careful, Simon.
Yeah, I was already part of the Conservative Party.
Exactly my point. National Liberals are part of them.
Yeah.
On the specific point about personality and policy, there will be policy differences. I'm not sure there'll be personality differences. Like Charlie, I was amazed at those scenes on Downing Street yesterday. Who could look at those pictures and actually tell the difference between these two people? I'm worried about their civil servants, how they will get it right as to who they're talking to. Is it Tweedlecam or is it Tweedleclegg? I'm not sure. I mean, they are so alike in that sense, and their backgrounds are similar. But on the original question that Lucy asked about, did they sacrifice too much? No, they didn't sacrifice too much. On the big issues, and this is what Simon doesn't seem to get here, on the big issues, the economy, spending cuts, the recession, the Lib Dems simply sacrificed their main policy. Vince Cable was with Alistair Darling for 4 weeks saying no cuts this year. Vince Cable described cuts this year as a dangerous Tory proposal which was a smokescreen for job cuts. Now Vince Cable has signed up to job cuts this year. Electoral reform we talked about earlier. The Tories are going to campaign opposed it. Trident we talked about earlier. It's going to get renewed. Europe, let's not even go down that road on what influence the Liberal Democrats are going to have over the Tories and their nutters and anti-Semites and homophobes, to quote Nick Clegg, who are in bed with the Tories. So, like Charlie, I think they haven't really got what they wanted. Yes, you've got a few scraps from the table, but on the really big issues, electoral reform, the economy, you didn't get what you wanted.
Simon Hughes?
Well, to answer Lucy James...
You're not going to answer his criticism.
Well, he
can't. He's cutting spending this year, so...
I'm trying to answer both the question and the comments, including from the panel. The answer is it's a question for the Tories whether they sacrifice too much, but I know that what has been agreed includes all the things that we had as spending commitments that were important. The investment in schools, agreed. Taking poor people out of tax up to 10,000, agreed. Not in the Tory manifesto, in our manifesto. Who's in charge? Not unimportant jobs in cabinet. The business secretary won the cabinet post, Vince Cable. Dealing with the banks that were the major cause of the problem.
He's not dealing with the banks.
He's going to be the cabinet minister responsible for the banks and for business. He's not saying no. That is in his department. And it's one of the crucial things that went wrong because the Labour Party did not regulate properly and they became like the Tories in letting the banks get away with it. David Laws, a Liberal Democrat, in charge of doing the spending review in a way that we think will be fair, not in a Tory way that would be unfair. So the answer, and it deals with Melanie's point, it's nothing to do with not being Liberal or Democratic, quite the opposite, Melanie. We are both Liberal and Democratic, and this programme for this government makes sure that all the freedoms that Labour took away, all the identity card proposals that they had put in place, all the detention of people without trial, the keeping of DNA, all that is going to be taken away. It's a new freedom charter which Labour deprived us of. And we get a democratic second chamber in Parliament. We get a step...
No, you don't. You get a committee to consider proposals.
No. This Parliament...
Did it say a committee?
No, Charlie, you've misread it. In this Parliament, there will be legislation that makes you and your colleagues a thing of the past very soon.
Simon.
And we have elected people in the second chamber, not people put in by patronage.
Simon.
And that's what we should have in a modern democracy in the United Kingdom.
Simon, your party was proposing, we are given to understand, to Labour in this coalition talks that it should introduce the alternative vote system without even asking the British people. That's how democratic you are. You wanted to change the entire electoral system without even asking them in a referendum.
But that's because, as other people have conceded, it's not a change to a proportional system. It's simply putting 1, 2, 3, 4 rather than a cross. An improvement, but certainly not a fair vote system, which is still to be negotiated for and achieved.
Achieved? Are you going to get proportional representation?
There's still a woman here on the right here.
Good luck.
I completely agree with Heseltine and Hughes that the coalition government, that is what we voted for. We need... That's... What else would you suggest? Would you suggest we have a minority government, Conservative government, which on working day-to-day policy would never work? Or do you think we should have a left rainbow coalition government, which would never work either?
But no one voted for a coalition government.
But we did vote for a coalition government.
We've got to do our best.
Well, exactly. It's not on the voting paper. You vote for a constituent...
And if they don't get a majority, Melanie, they don't have the right to govern on their own.
But, Melanie, the question is whether this arrangement, the coalition, is not more stable and better for the country as a whole than the alternative.
Well, the idea that a coalition is better for a country because you basically have a lot of people...
government, I think.
Well, first of all, it's not stable.
How do you know?
Because the history of... Well, it's not necessarily stable. The history of coalitions... The history of coalitions is often that the constituents of the coalition, particularly the Liberals, can't stomach it and fall apart, and the coalition falls apart.
And that's why we've agreed a 5-year agreement, Melanie, built into the agreement. It will be a government for 5 years, for good or for bad. It's at least going to give security for 5 years, and that's better for Britain than something like fall apart in 5 minutes.
Simon, I said there was a... I said there was a question for Michael Heseltine. There's one that's rather more directed at you, perhaps, and let's just take it very briefly from Stuart Mariner, please.
If David Cameron's favourite joke is Nick Clegg, how long do the panellists really believe that this coalition government will last?
It'll last for 5 years. and not only will it last for 5 years, but also we've moved at last to having a system where we know how long parliaments will last for, to fixed-term parliaments, because that gives in itself stability, security for everybody, for business, for government, for civil service, for local government, for other people. The electorate now know that the next election will take place in May 2015. Like it or not, that's when it will happen. Right. The majority is big enough, and that gives a huge amount of stability, and I'll wager you that this government will be in place up to that general election.
I want to move on to a slightly different topic, but springing from the election. Layla Baker, please.
Who should be the next leader of the Labour Party?
Who should be the next leader of the Labour Party? Charles Falconer, you've got a candidate already up your sleeve, so to speak.
Not really up my sleeve, out there already campaigning. I think it's incredibly important for Labour to have an open election where all the best in Labour come out and campaign. We haven't had a leadership election since 1994, which is 16 years ago, when Tony Blair won. Gordon Brown was elected NEMCOM, so there was no election debate. We need to have an open discussion. Who will the candidates be? They may be... Well, they will certainly be David Miliband, because he's already indicated he's running. I think he is the best candidate. He is a man of experience. He is a man of real stature. And he's a man who will be an effective opposition to what I think is going to be a moderately embarrassed and confused and increasingly Tory government. And I think what Labour's got to do as the only opposition party is to offer stable government, a sensible economic policy and sensible reform in the political system. And I believe David Miliband is the best person.
But does the Labour Party need a complete rethink of what it's doing? Does it need to go away in opposition and work out a new way? Because it clearly didn't appeal that much to the electorate.
I think much of what we were saying in terms of policy is right. I think our difficulty is that we lost the trust of the British people. Because I think over a period of time, over 12 or 13 years, the dominant figures in Labour between 1997 and 2010 were Tony Blair and Gordon Brown.
But Gordon Brown blames himself.
And for entirely different reasons, people in this country